welcome, everybody. I'm doing a short video, probably about 20 minutes, maybe a bit longer, on the settings on a pinball machine because I go to venues or go to events and I see people struggling with this. And I also see things that could be just a little bit, let's say, improved, a little bit better. I'm one of these crazies that good is never enough. So, first of all, I'm Neil McRae. This is the Domino Arcade. I'm a pinball player. I stream on Twitch. I got a YouTube channel. Occasionally come 10th in pinball tournaments. I love to play pinball and video games. It's a great hobby of mine. I'm a networking guy by background. So I'm a technologist, in inverted commas, although I like to use the old word for technologist. I'm an engineer. So let's dive in here. I've got an Avengers AIQ, which is set up on my streaming rig. I just thought I'd quickly knock this up. And if I press this button, I go into the service menu, and this tells me the name of the game. It's an LE, it's number 52. Version 1.03 is the code it's running. System 2.97, I think, is Stern's system version that runs all the node boards and all the stuff. And then OS, I think, is the operating system that Stern uses, which is Linux. I think that's 2.04. I might be wrong on the last one. If anyone from Stern wants to correct me, feel free. The service menu has got lots of different options in it. It's kind of set up. It still looks like it's kind of come from the land of dots. You know, when we bought games with DMDs on them rather than LCDs, but in actual fact, the functionality is, you know, you could have a fancy menu, but I'd rather they were writing code for games than writing codes for menus. That's just me personally. So you see this setup, and I'm gonna can I sit down and get away with this? Maybe not. You see this this setup menu, and basically, actually, let me grab one of my bar stools. Just so that I'm not bobbing around. There we go. Finally found a use for this stool. So, you got a lot of different options here. Diag, audio, adjustments, net, util, tour, tour for tournament, red for reception, and quit takes you out. Start with the first one, Diag. Diag's all about helping you make sure the game's working right or debugging any issues that you come along with. The first one is switch. So these are the switches in the game. And you can go into switch test, press a button, and it will test the switch for you. You can bounce a ball around, take the glass off, and make sure switches are running. Active. This actually tells you what switches are on. And that's quite important because in some games, switches go off rather than go on. Great example, Walking Dead, the wall walker is on by default, and when he moves, it turns it off. And actually, I had a lot of issues with that, and it was too sensitive. And this menu allowed me to see when it was on and off, and actually adjust the switch so that the well walker wasn't starting multi-ball by himself, basically. You can see on this menu, I'm pressing the flipper button, you see that middle square lighting. Very useful menu for debugging some of the more complex mechanisms. And also your trough and stuff as well, which I'll come on to later. Switch alerts. This kind of points you to places where it might think there's a switch issue or something that you need to look at. Tend to not go into there too often. And then that's the switch menu. So I'll go back. Coil. Something similar allows you to test the coils. So if I go to the left flipper test, it allows you to go through all the coils and test. This allows you to run a cycle of tests, which I'll stop because it's noisy. Quite useful from the point of view of trying to debug coil linkages or issues, or just leave it running to make sure everything's working before you put it on site, which I'll come to another option that's useful for that later on. And then lamps, making sure that all the LEDs work. If I kind of scroll through this, you'll see it testing all the lights. You can go one by one. You can turn them all on. You can just turn the GI on. You can turn the flashers on. Again, go around where all the flashers are. just to help you make sure all the lights are working. Great. The next one is game-specific tests. So this will be very specific to Avengers. If you've got a different game, this will look different. So you can test the drop targets. You can test the motor. So if I press this button, you'll see the disc. Can you see that? Actually, you can just see that go down. You can test the disc to make sure it's spinning and registering when it spins. You can test the subway lock. This game's the LE's got a subway where the ball bounces around. You can do an RGB test on some of the LEDs in this menu because it's got specific LEDs for different things, for all the gems, for example. And really a really useful thing to debug some of the issues that you might find in a game around some of the specific toys that a game might have. You've then got no boards, and I hope you never have to go into this because usually means something's not working right. In Stern, the Stern games have 4 or 5 different node boards. 0 is the CPU. Then you've got 1 in 1 second. Then you've got node board 1, which is the kind of board by the door, coin door. You've got boards 8 and 9, which is one's at the top of the playfield, one's somewhere in the middle. And then if you've got a topper like I do, there's also a node board in the topper. If you've got Stern Insider connected, you will also get a node board for Stern Insider collected. And there's a test here where you can run tests to find out, what's going on. Probably only go into this if Stern really tell you to do it, or you see a node board issue come up. Sometimes you'll see node board, it'll say, overpower. One thing that does that is if you get a short, or if you stick an incandescent bulb in to replace an LED, that sometimes causes that. I did that once on a coin door by accident. So it's worth swapping a coin door from a UK one to a US one. The US one had a incandescent bulb in it, caused this error. I changed the bulb, it was all good. The next one in the diag menu is ball trough test. And this is probably the one I would guess that you might use the most. So this is showing the ball trough where the balls sit whilst the game's idle. And it's showing the switch numbers 15 through 20, which is where the balls are, 6 balls in this game. 21 and 22. So 22 is easy, that's the switch on the shooter lane. So when the ball's in the shooter lane, that switches on and the game knows it can whack the ball to launch it, or that it doesn't need to serve a ball. 21 is a special an optical switch, and it detects that there's perhaps a jam. So if 21 lights, it stays on, it typically means something bad's happened and the game will back off and perhaps put up a trough jam alert on the screen. This is really helpful for debugging. If you've got a multi-ball and you lose one of the balls, but the game goes into bonus and it ends the ball, this is where you want to come to debug that to find out what's going on. You'll find crazy things. I had this problem on an Iron Man, I think it was Iron Man, and it was always ending multi-balls, and it turns out there's one more ball in the game than there should have been. And you kind of find weird stuff like that going on. Also, if you've got a ball that's lost, you can check, if there's a ball stuck somewhere, I wouldn't have ball 15, and I'd know I'd need to find it. So a very useful utility. Every game should have this. The one game I'd love for this to have is TNA, because it's very quick on ejecting balls out, and it can be it actually doesn't have a trough test, and it makes it harder to debug certain issues. Technical alerts. So sometimes, like if you had a trough error, it might come up here, or a switch that isn't activating right or always on, it might pop up here. Typically, when you go into the diag mode, the service menu, it pops these up as you come into it, and it could be fine. What you really want is no technician alerts. That's what you really want to find. You got knocker, so I've only got the sound knocker. You can test it if you put a real one in. You can test that. Speaker, you can test the speakers, make sure they're working, and then burning. This is quite a useful test. This effectively tests everything at the same time. Turns on all the tests, the LEDs, the coils, the motors, the screen, although it's doing a dots test, which is a bit bit kind of not relevant in today's game, but it can be useful on a D&D game. You can see how useful that would be. But what I find this useful for, when I built the Domino arcade, I had a real challenge with power blipping. And it's quite hard to test it, so I put all the games into burn mode because it kind of simulates the game running. And it was a good way of testing that. Yeah, all the games are doing burn mode. The power's not resetting. I've solved the problem, and it turns out I had a leaky earth coming out of one of the games that I fixed. So. A useful thing to kind of test whether everything's working right. And actually, I think Stern used this before they sent games out because this game had burn-in time on it before I got it. Then dot test, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of comes from the time where you see behind me, you got Spider-Man, Star Trek, and X-Men, where they've got DMDs, and it's again useful for that, but less useful for LCDs. I'm sure they will update that as time progresses. And that's the Diag menu. It's probably the menu you'll be in the most, but hopefully not too often. The next menu is Audits, AUD. And this probably aim more at people who put games on site, but you can sometimes get some interesting, useful. So if you're on, if you're on site, you want to know how much your game's earning. This has had one paid credit, which is probably a test credit that Stern put through it, because I haven't put any money into it. That's for sure. But then SPI's got some interesting credits. Total balls played. I don't know why it's kind of it's kind of buried in here, but total plays, so total number of games, 1,500. Total competition mode plays, so this is where you're running it in a tournament or you've got competition mode on, and then total challenge mode plays. This is me doing Ping Clash, where we're using the challenge mode on this game as the qualifiers, and I'll come back to that later on. But lots of useful information. You get score bands, what's the average score, 66 million, not very good, Neil. And how many ball searches have started. You can see why some of this, is this a drain monster? I would say no, because there's more center drains than left or right. That's that's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if that's the right way of looking at it, but it's kind of how I look at it. How many times the flipper being used? I mean, look, just an insane amount of data on the features. How many features being used? How many times? And make. I mean, it's quite handy to see that nothing's zero. There was a zero there. What was that? Right spinner spun. There's no right spinner in the LE version. That's why that hasn't spun. But quite a useful thing. I mean, if that could be useful if the spinner wasn't registering, that would be a useful way of figuring it out. Mystery spot strange. Don't know what that is. I think these are just things that I haven't got to or haven't hit, basically. But you can see how they're useful at. I mean, what would really be great is if you could kind of browse this via the web and just dig into this. You can dump it to USB, but I mean, who uses USB sticks these days? Archaic technology, very insecure, and something you don't want to be doing. Adjustments. Again, this is a menu. This is actually the adjustments that made me wanted to do this video, because as I said at the start, quite often I'll go outside and it's like, crikey, if only they'd turn this mode on, life would be so much easier. They're split into two. I won't really go into the depths of the second one, which is game. I'll quickly overview it now, but these are all things that are related to the game, how hard you want to make it, how easy you want to make it. It does have a couple of things in it that I don't think should be in the game menu. Things like, there's one here that will come up. Things like trough eject and auto plunge power, I think they should be in. They're on every game. They should be in the other one, and I'll explain a bit more of that. There's another one like shaker motor. I think that should be in the SPI one, because it's on every game basically. I think only things unique to a game should be in this menu, but things kind of bounce all over the place. Like in this menu, it has the start button. The action button that's on the lockdown bar. It tells you in this feature adjustment is where you set what it does, which I think should be in the SPI menu. And if I go back to the SPI menu, which I think Stern Pinball Inc., these are things that are common to every machine. So you've got things like the replay. How many replays do you get in a game? I won't go into the huge detail on that because it's really focused on operators who don't want to give too many games away free, but want to give the odd one. and you got different levels, you got different awards. You can give like a extra ball rather than a credit, a percentage, how many games. If you play 100 games and 10% of them get a replay, that's what you're aiming for. Uh, Replay type auto is, I think, as the game, as people get more replays, it makes it harder for them, stuff like that. And then if you get and that pushes the score up. If you get 260 million, you get a replay. Free game limit. You don't want to give away too many free games. You probably want, if you're an operator, you probably reduce this to maybe one or two. Extra balls. So my games tend to be played a lot in tournaments, so I've got all extra balls off. Something everyone moans at me about, but when they come to play here, but it kind of works for me. If I want an extra ball, I just press start. It doesn't cost me any money. Pricing. Yeah, I mean, you can set this different modes. This is kind of the factory default, £2 for a game. I don't that's a think that's going to make an awful lot of money. So we tend to see games in the UK £1 a game and 3 for £2. That tends to be what's in the UK. Match percentage at the end of the game, where it does a match, it says 9% of all matches will give you a free game. And it gives you a credit, which is a free game. How many balls per game? Some people play 5 ball. I play 3. In the UK league here, we play 4 for some reason that escapes me. I'm sure it was a good idea at the time. Max players per game. Actually, this is quite a useful thing. If you've got family that come and visit, aren't really into pinball, but they'll have a play. You can change this to 1. And it basically means when they hit the start button like 100 times, they'll only get 1 player. So you don't find like loads of games with half played 4-player games running. I play a lot of match play, so I'll leave it at 4. Tilt warnings, good old tilt. How many times you get warned before it tilts you? Typical, that's set to 2. Unless you're 2 per ball, unless you're Jersey Jack, which can be 2 per game, which drives everybody nuts. And the first thing that everyone changes on a Jersey Jack game is to change it to 2 tilt warnings per ball. Tilt debounce is just making sure if you really give the game a shake, that it doesn't give you 2 warnings and a tilt. It kind of lets the tilt bob settle, so you're not. If you make one big move, you don't get penalised too much for it. Although some would say you should. I'm not one of them people. If you're not tilting, you're not trying. Credit limit: how much money you can stick in. How many credits you can have before the game stops rejecting coins. I don't know why you'd ever have that limited, but anyway. Allow high scores. Of course, you want to save high scores. What's the high score award? If you get the grand champion, what do you get? You get a credit. If you're a grand champion, you get 1. If you're all the other high scores, you get none. The grand champion default score is 60 million. You got all the other default scores. High score initials. Some people set this to things other than 3. I don't know why. 3 is the right answer. High score table reset. So if I set this to 10, after 10 games, it will reset the high score. In my shop, if you get the high score, you're on the game until I sell it. And then it's up to the next guy as to what he does. A high score is a high score for life in the Domino arcade. Free play, yep. Language, change the languages. Custom message, you can set your own custom message. Maybe you want to set, text this number if you see a fault with the game, or some other message, your website, or will you marry me if you're that way inclined to try and use a different way to ask the big question. I wonder if anyone's ever done that. Hopefully. Knocker volume, that's the knocker I mentioned earlier. Start game and credit. So this again, more for operators. If you put a credit in, rather than waiting to press the start button, the game will automatically start the game. Start button behavior. So this is very linked to Stern Insider Connect. This is a new option just in the latest code. And what this does is if you've got 3 or 4 players logged in with Insider Connect and you hit the start button, it will start a 4-player game. If you change it to single credit, it will only do 1, I think, player 1's game. And this is the default, something I think to be careful about, because you could, if you put credits in, you could spend them accidentally on other players. Although I don't have that problem because all my games are free play, except for my games on location, of course. Game restart. This just allows you to hold the start button to restart a game when you're on the second ball. Game mode on start. So on modern Stern games, if you hold and Spike 2, more recent ones, I think all of them now though, all the Spike 2 games, if you hold both flipper buttons in, you will get a menu, and the menu options are a standard game. I'll come to it later on. A standard game, a challenge game, which is the kind of Black Order. It's just called something else. I can't remember what it's called, but in effect, it lets you do one of the wizard modes as a kind of challenge thing. So in this, it's how few flips and how big a score can you get. In the challenge mode, is what Carl's used for Pin Clash a couple of times. And you can also put it on competition as well, I think, if you've got that enabled. This is just the default, so usually it's set to standard. Inside a login timer, so this will give you 30 seconds once you've logged in to start a game, otherwise it'll log you out. If I was Stern, I'd probably half that. Long time, 30 seconds. Play again is 20, that's probably a safer number. And I haven't changed these as a default, but if you finish, it'll wait for 20 seconds before it gives up, trying to entice you to play another game. Big thank you to whoever put this in. Start button attract mode elimination. So there's 3 modes for this: always on, always off, and blinking. Blinking's the default. God knows why. I don't know who asked for this, but you're my hero, because we got a lot of games with these buttons blinking. It's so freaking distracting. You've no idea how crazy it's like hypnotic. So I just change it to the start button is always on. In theory, it should be off until you put money in, but on free play, you can always hit start. Right, this is one of the most important settings, and I want everybody who's got a Spike 2 game to go set this option right now. So, there is nothing worse when you need to restart a game. It's on 4-player, it's on ball 1, player 3, and you've got to get through a whole lot of stuff to be able to restart the game. Or you can turn on and off, but that's got challenges as well. So what you can do is you can set this mode. So this mode has 3 settings. One is never, so this effectively turning this option off. One is only if you've got free play enabled, and one is always. So I've got free play enabled, so I've got it on free play. And what this allows you to do is hold the left flipper button, and you press that down, and then you press the start button, and it will end the game that's currently in play. All of the games. If it's a 4-player game, it ends all of them. If it's a 1-player game, it ends a 1-player game. It then returns all the balls to the trough, ready for you to press start again. It is one of the most useful things added to settings in a pinball machine in I don't know how long. Every pinball manufacturer should add this. It's so freaking useful. And if you've got access to the code on old games, can you fix that too, please? Because it's just incredibly useful. And really glad that Stern added this. Such a useful feature. Ball save time, again, this is, you got 12 seconds before you lose a ball. If you're Josh, you set this to 0. If you're Neil, on some games you leave it as it is. On other games where the plunge isn't safe, you might leave it on. And in games where the plunge is safe, like something like Star Trek, I'd turn this off. Something like Star Wars, I'd probably put it up to 100, because the plunge on that game is so atrocious. Sorry, Steve. Target game time, I think there's something Stern added for like events where you could put a target time in, and it'll kind of, if you've got a long list of players, you don't want someone hogging it for hours, so you put this target time game in, and it will end the game after like a minute and a half, so that the next person can play in the line. Time plunger, this is from pressing start. If you set this, it'll automatically start the plunger after 5 seconds. It can be handy in tournaments where you get these helpful people that try and spend like 3 hours trying to get the right plunge on a game, like Twilight Zone. I was trying to get the skill shot, take the plunger out, set this to sorry, not this one. This one. Sorry, flipper ball launch. So yeah, so this is really helpful where the time plunger is probably helpful in a kind of show place or even in an arcade where you want the game to kind of resync without you having to do anything. So you plunge the balls after 30 seconds. Flipper ball launches where you press both flippers and it launches the ball. It's really handy where you've got again, as I said, a game that needs it's got kind of one of these skill shots that someone's trying to plunge for like 20 minutes before they get the game going. And the way of solving that is just take the plunger out for the competition, turn this on. That can be really, really, really useful. Coin door ball saver. This is another setting that, in my mind, should be default. Um, what this allows is, if you get a stuck ball, you competitor puts their hand up, you go over as you're the TD, you take the glass off, you get the ball out. I've seen so many times that in the process of doing that, the ball frees itself and comes down and ends the ball for that player. It's so infuriating for them. As a TD, it's a pain in the ass. So what you do is you turn this option on and you open the coin door and you're in safe land. If the ball hits the trough, if it frees itself or you drop it, which I've done, and it hits the trough, no problem. You just close the door. The ball will be reserved to the player. It will be launched, and his game continues. It is one of the most useful things. In Stern, actually, one of the things I'd really love for you to do. I got some games that haven't got coin door switches on them. I'd love a kit to add it to them. So I think my Deadpool, my Black Knight, my Iron Maiden were all made before you started putting coin door switches back in. I'd really love to put a kit in so that I could enable this because it's most of my games are used for tournaments, and this is a really, really useful tournament feature. Well, and actually, it's a useful feature on location as well. If you've got a player that you're trying to free a ball for a customer who's paid to play the game. Competition mode. This just resets all the random stuff to be the same, so you tend to put this on the tournament. So if you get mystery, you get, and the mystery is 5 million points. Player 2 gets mystery, will get the same mystery in the same order. Pretty standard setting, been around for a while. Fast boot, I think this is a legacy of old stuff. Don't anyone touches this. Everyone wants the game to boot fast. I don't know why you turned it to no, but it's just when you turn the game on. Coin meter, there's a little meter inside that this will poke if you put coins in. Ticket dispenser is again if you're in a place with lots of sugar and sticky floors and lots of kids that love tickets so they can get their prizes. My granddaughter, I actually think if I put a ticket machine on my pinball machine, my granddaughter would get right into them. Maybe I'll try that. Player game mode. This just allows you to set the game mode as you with the buttons. Basically, it's linked to that, so you can set different modes. There's competition mode, there's challenge mode, so you can set whichever one. If you want to start a game in competition mode, if you're in maybe a barcade, you can't access the settings, but you can still set competition mode as a player using the menu with the two buttons on the game. Quite a useful thing to add, assuming that the person doesn't turn that off, which could happen, but usually doesn't. DJ mixer mode is a kind of sound thing. I won't go into details of that, but it allows you to play the music from the game as a bit of a jukebox. Quite a useful setting on games like Deadpool where the music is amazing. And there's some settings to go with that. I won't go into them. Location ID. If you're taking dumps of the audits, having a location ID on it can be helpful so you know which game's which. And game ID, if you're a company, you probably want to put an asset tag in that or something like that, just so you know which game's which and where it is, and you can prove to your accountant that the game exists. Time format never used to be that important, but with games online, it's becoming much more important because part of the security of the internet is based around time, ensuring that when the pinball machine talks to the server, it uses this protocol called TLS, which has a time component to it, so time is becoming more important. And if you're downloading I'm guessing, I've never done this, but if you're downloading the audits, it'll put it into 24-hour time format. I'm a geek, so I have it in 24-hour time format. Pricing format, I won't go into that again. In credit format, it's all related to if you've got your game on location, coin input delay, how long do you wait before you give up? Lost ball recovery. This can be a kind of pleasure or a painful thing depending on your point of view. If you're an operator, you want this on for sure. What this does is, if a ball gets stuck or disappears for whatever reason, the game will recover and just instead of having a 4-ball game or a 6-ball game, you'll have a 5-ball game or a 3-ball game, and the game will just continue to play after a while. It marks the ball as lost. And if you've got games on location, you don't want to have to trek miles to fix a stuck ball because the game becomes unplayable. So you definitely turn this on location. I've got it off here because I've got a stuck ball. I wanna figure it out. Games that flip out, I've got this on so that if the stuck ball's there, the game's still playable, and I'll fix it when I'm next out there. But a really useful feature. Coin door disable tilt. Again, this linked to the other one. When you open the coin door, just disable the tilt. So if you're taking the glass off, you're putting the bar back on, you bang it by accident, you don't tilt the player out. Again, another super useful feature in any scenario. I encourage everybody to turn this on. Coin door open, no burst power. I think this used to be set to no by default, but it's now set to yes. It's basically just making sure all the boards have still got power. But turn off the high power to the coil so you don't zap yourself if you're fiddling on the game. Not something to fiddle with, I think, unless Stern tell you to. Player track tutorial videos. So in the game, you'll see on the screen a couple of videos. One is how to start a game, which that video drives me nuts. But then there's a whole lot of other videos that I think Carl D'Angelo did, which will tell you how to play the games, and they're really useful. I wish I could turn the start one off but keep the other ones on because they're really cool tutorial videos. Although I tend to turn them off because I always try, when I buy a game, I always try to play it without any knowledge of what to do and try and learn it myself. I think it's a lot of fun that way. This you probably won't see unless you have the Stern headphone accessory on your game. So I've got that on all my games because I use it to grab sound for streaming. And what it means is you can set the volume knob just to be headphones, to be the cabinet volume, or disable it entirely. Probably most people have it set like that. Certainly on location, you'd want to have it set like that. Otherwise, people turn the volume up and drive you nuts. But it's a really useful feature that only comes on if you've got that accessory. Mute if headphones are detected. Again, if you plug the headphones in, it'll turn off this. If you have this on and you plug the headphones in, it'll turn the sound off on the main game. If you've got a wife and kids that are asleep, that can be a useful feature. Mute knocker if headphones detected. So yeah, this turns off the knocker. If you trust me, you don't want to hear that when you got headphones on. It's not pleasant. And disable Q24 knock if HP thing. I think this is something similar, which is if you've got a real knocker, it disables it. I don't know why I've got that on. No, I probably want to have that on yes. And then here's some other useful features. So, some people find these games really bright. They've got light sensitive eyes. You can turn the brightness down of the GI. You can turn the brightness down of other stuff in some of the other menus. And you've got the insert LED brightness. I probably wouldn't touch this at all. These are the lights to tell you what's going on in the game on the playfield. And flashers, the same thing. And also a new feature that's only added recently. You can adjust the brightness of the LCD display, which, again, I never thought that was too bright, but clearly someone's asked for that just to kind of tone it down. You don't get any real reflection from the LCD on a game, so I don't know what the value of turning that down is. Now here's another thing that's so useful, and I'll kind of explain it to you. And to do that, I have to come out. So you see the in the top corner there, the back box for Avengers. You see how bright it is. And while there's no one playing, that's great. The downside is you get a really big reflection of that back box on the glass, and in particular on Avengers, Jurassic Park, and Godzilla. For me personally, I've not great eyes. I wear glasses. you get a lot of glare. But by setting this option, and I'll go through it in a second, when I press start, you will see that the back box dimmed, and I've got that set so it goes down to 20%, and it's a really again superly useful feature that just allows the game to be more playable. I'll go back to that option. Here we go. So a track mode. So when the game's not being used 100%, no one cares if there's any reflection. When a game's playing, bring it down to 20%. You know, it's on. You can see it. You can see the phenomenal artwork on these games, but it's not reflecting hard on the glass. And I'm lucky all my games have got low reflective glass, but if you're in a competition where there's pros or there's older games, that reflection for me personally, it's really hard. It makes it so much harder to see what's going on. And then you get people wearing lights so that they can see stuff. So this is just a simple feature that makes a massive difference. And then the final feature is if you actually you're in the service menu, it brings it down to 2% because you possibly might have the back glass off, and you kind of get irradiated by the or blinded by the light, as Robert would say. Blinded by light, or blinded by Dwight. This just allows you to take it to 2%, so you can actually see what you're doing in the back box if you're plugging in a topper or a mod or something, or trying to update the code in the old-fashioned way. That is the adjustments. As I said, the game ones I'm not going to go into. They're all very specific to the game. You should explore them, and it's useful to explore them. And I'll give you an example. Guardians of the Galaxy, Groot. Everyone loves Groot. I am Groot. It's phenomenal mech. But in competitions, quite often the ball will get stuck there. So you can basically turn the game into what they call virtual locks. Groot keeps his mouth shut. When you hit Groot, it registers a lock. You don't get any stuck balls. You don't get any issues with the balls coming out there, and life is good. And other things, if you've got a mech or a bit of the game that's not working right, or it's not 100%. Maybe it's a turntable on something. You just turn it off, and the game will adjust. It'll rethink how the game plays. And it's good to know where these things are, so that if you have got that problem, you're not spending like half an hour trying to figure out which feature it is. The ones I use a lot, as I said, Groot, multi-balls one. I turn virtual locks on Batman 66. I turn virtual locks on Stranger Things. Normally goes things locks in the back box. That can be problematic. So you just want the game to play as safe as possible. So it's worth learning. Spend a bit of time learning stuff like that. The next one is net. It's new. And basically, because I don't have a scanner plugged into this game, but this allows you to connect to Wi-Fi, and you scan your card, and you go online, you record your scores, and a lot more to come. You get achievements similar to Xbox achievements or Scorebit achievements. If you've got a Jersey Jack game, Scorebit have had achievements for a while. Cool little thing to add, and definitely, as someone who's an online nut, get your game online with Stern Insider Connect and with Scorebit, because they do different things, and they're complementary. So I'm a massive Scorebit fan. I got it on all my games, and for running tournaments, nothing beats it. And it's just superb. You can challenge your buddies, and it's a phenomenal thing. Insider Connect looks good so far, but it's early days, and running an online platform is not the most easiest things to do. Hopefully, Stern and Scorebit will work together, and we'll have one platform that unites the pinball community. That's what I'd love to see. Utilities, again, this got a load of kind of slightly wacky things. You probably never go in here, other than maybe the installs. So installs have got a set of pre-formatted settings. So one of them's factory, sets everything back to factory. One's director's cut, which might be either the game designer or the game coder. What settings do they like? One is install competition, and an install competition is different from setting competition mode on. Install competition will change other settings. And the great thing about these settings is when you install it, if you go back to the settings, you can see what's a factory setting and what's installed, and you can scroll through quickly and find out what competition settings changed. I kind of wish you could dump what it said, and maybe in the future Stern will do that with as they kind of move towards an LCD world. You can install 5-ball or 3-ball. You can install hard, easy, or extra hard. You can install novelty, which turns off the match at the end. So Lyman Sheets told me, Neil, do install novelty, install competition on any game for competition. I do that on all my games, and then probably took a few other things, but these all do different things to the settings. You can work through them and figure it out. Guided setup's the same thing you do when you first get a game. It asks you some basic questions. Custom message allows you to set your own custom message if you want to spend hours doing that. Will you marry me? Edit coin door allows you to set up the coin door maybe for tokens if you're using tokens, or a credit card, touch card, or even a contactless card. This allows you to adjust settings so that the game knows from the device you're using to take payment that that it's working right. Same with pricing. Set up your own pricing regime. Set a temp high score table code. Now, not a lot of people understand or know about this, but what this allows you to do is to set a flipper code. So you could set your initials, or you just set, Fred, and then if you go and flip that flipper code, it will temporarily reduce the high score. So if you're trying to impress, you're trying to get your husband to buy a pinball game, maybe you set up a temporary high score. He gets a high score and says, "Oh, I really like this game," and he buys it, or allows you to buy it. And life is good, because nothing endears you more to a pinball game. Nothing endears you more to liking a game is to having a good game on a game. At least that's my experience. Let me know if you agree or not. You can save the settings onto a USB stick and load them again. If you're an operator, probably helpful. Volume. There's a whole load of stuff in here on volume. There's almost a graphic equalizer. Load of useful settings for you to play with. To be honest, I kind of leave it at default. Jerry, who runs sound at Stern, the man's a genius. You don't need to fiddle with anything on this, in my view at least. Tournament menu. This is linked to the tournament button on the game. So if you turn player tournament mode on, you can set up a tournament where you put coins in, and it kind of increases if you like, a kitty of money to win. And you can play your friends if you're in a pub or a bar. It's a cool thing to set up. Johnny Jack Bar does this, as well as Stig here in the UK, Adam, and where he's got games, he turns this on. It's quite a cool little thing for a little community, just to win a few. I mean, you're not going to win millions, but you win enough to buy a couple of beers and a burger maybe. But definitely worth, if you put a game on location, I'd encourage you to turn this on. Put some signage up about how it works, because I think it's a really cool underutilized feature. I wish I could use it here with no coins, but it really needs a kitty of cash. Redemption, if you've got the ticket thing on the game, this will allow you to set how many tickets depending on what you win, etc. Oops. And I think, that's it. We're at the end of it. And I hope that was useful. I think the two things, you really want to take away with this is, one, that the coin door settings for tilt and ball save, very useful settings please start and give us a kit to add it to the ones that don't have it. Two, or tell us how to do it, and we'll go out and buy the bits and do it ourselves. Two, the display at the back, dimming it so it's easier for people with to see the game a bit clearer. A very useful feature. You know, and turning the ball lost ball mode off or on if your game's remote. You know, these are all helpful things. The left flipper and the start button to kill a game, such a useful thing. Really encourage you to learn how these menus work. Again, you won't be in them that often, but when you need to be in them, you know, you if you know them, you can fire through and do something. You know, change the game, make the game what you want it to be, and learn from it. So, and turning off, you know, things that you don't want to run, or turning on virtual lock mode and competitions and stuff. All worth knowing and learning how to do that. Anyway, look, I'm Neil McRae. I hope this was a useful run through of this. Got any questions or clarifications or corrections? Feel free to post in comments. Thumbs up and subscribe if you're so inclined. This is the world famous Domino Arcade. I hope to see you play here one day. And I hope you have this is the 31st of December 2021. What a year it's been. I hope you have a great pinballing year. I hope to play against you or play with you over a beer. And I wish you the most fantastic pinball year that you can have next year. Happy New Year. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you the next time I get annoyed by something and do a video about it. Have a nice one. Bye bye.